Good morning, everyone. Lots to get to today. We're going to look at the Iranian foreign minister meeting with the Canadian foreign minister, and they're having a few laughs. We're going to see how Iran views dual citizenship. They don't, and how that impacts the numbers on the Iranian plane that was downed. And first, we're going to look at some domestic stuff, things happening in Canada. And CP24 is reporting, quote, Trudeau ministers head to Winnipeg for cabinet retreat, Western outreach. Western outreach, meaning going to the one place out west where they won seats. Okay, back to this. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is reviving his practice of holding periodic cabinet retreats outside the nation's capital, an exercise in regional outreach that his office maintains is worth the added cost of ferrying ministers around the country. I would disagree with that. I think that it's probably, we have offices in Ottawa for a reason, and anyway, back to this. Beginning Sunday, he and his 36 ministers will be holed up in Winnipeg for 3 days to discuss priorities and plot how to bring them to fruition in a House of Commons where the Liberals hold only a minority of seats. Now, again, they're planning the government's moves forward, but again, like, we've got facilities in Ottawa specially designed for that, right? Like, that's where they do the work most of the time. So I just think it's strange to move everybody out there, and I don't know. Maybe it is worth it, but I don't think it's worth the added cost. But anyway, back to this. And for a government that talks about like carbon costs and all that other stuff, like, if it's real, behave as if it's real. They're not, right? Or if they are, they're buying carbon offsets. And every article I've read that says that's not a good choice. If you can not put the CO2 in the atmosphere, don't. And these guys are saying, oh, yeah, it's totally worth the cost. It's totally worth the cost. We're not going to talk about the environmental cost, because if we did, we'd be hypocrites. But it's totally worth the monetary cost to taxpayers. Yeah, you guys, totally worth the cost. Hypocrites. Okay, this is to be followed by a 3-day caucus retreat with Liberal MPs in Ottawa in preparation for the resumption of Parliament on January 27th, its first extended sitting since the Liberals were reduced to a minority in the October election. The choice of Winnipeg is a nod to the East-West divide exposed in the election. The Liberals shut out entirely in Alberta and Saskatchewan, where voters were irate over the environmental policies they believe have gutted the energy industry. They believe? I mean, lots of experts have weighed in on this. There's experts who believe it too, and lots of people in government. Okay, back there. Manitoba, where the Liberals lost 3 of 6 seats, is somewhat friendlier territory. The province's premier, Brian Pallister, has signed a willingness to try to bridge willingness to bridge the divide between the federal government and his fellow conservative prairie premiers. Trudeau is to meet separately with Pallister while he's in town, as well as with Winnipeg Mayor Brian Bowman. I scroll down a little bit. Conservative MP Candace Bergen, who represents a Manitoba riding, dismissed the Winnipeg retreat as a show of listening to Westerners without actually changing the failed policies like the federal carbon tax the prairie voters rejected. If this is to be a sincere effort, the Trudeau Liberals should meet directly with Manitobans to understand how their policies are making life more difficult, she said in a statement. Among the issues the ministers are expected to discuss during the Winnipeg retreat is what the government calls the challenge of an uncertain world, a timely topic as the country tries to come to grips with Iran's admission that it accidentally shot down a Ukrainian passenger jet last week. The crash killed all 176 people on board, including 57 Canadian citizens and 29 permanent residents. So I think that that's very interesting when you look at Iran's policy towards dual nationals, right? I think that, well, here we go. This is the Globe and Mail reporting January 13th, updated January 14th. So that's a few days ago. Today's the 18th. Iran's policy towards dual nationals means Canada must negotiate over burials. Iran's policy of not recognizing the second passports of dual nationals has led to intricate negotiations over how the remains of dozens of Iranian Canadians who died aboard Flight 752 would be treated. Tehran's position could affect the consular services that Canada and other countries that have dispatched teams to Tehran can provide to families of the victims of the disaster and where their remains are buried. I scroll down a little bit. 2 other sources in Ukraine, whom the Globe and Mail is not identifying because they were not authorized to speak on the record, said the issue of dual nationals was one of the thorniest in negotiations between Iran and the other 6 countries that lost citizens on Flight 752. State-controlled Iranian media has reported that more than 140 of the 176 people killed were Iranian passport holders, and that there were just 3 Canadian citizens on board, rather than 57, as Canada says. Now, does that change things? If this flight, number one, this flight was bound for Toronto, I think they were coming back after a wedding ceremony, and that's the humanitarian side of reporting this, right? They forget that a lot of them were nuclear scientists, and the Ukraine One connection, and there's lots here. There's lots that it's being underreported. But fundamentally, if this was a flight filled with Iranians shot down by Iran that had 3 Canadian citizens on board, what do those headlines look like? Those are really different than the headlines that we've been seeing, right? And the people that, like, Canada recognizes dual citizenship. I understand that. But Canada's jumping in to give $25,000 to families of Canadian victims of Flight PS 752. But how many of those families are in Canada? I've read reports of a person who's house sitting who's basically inherited a house because he's got to deal with it, right? Like, he's the husband and wife or whoever was in the house went to Iran and they're not coming home, right? This was it was supposed to be a puff piece of like how hard to deal with this situation, right? But it highlighted another problem, right? Where's the family? Where's the next of kin? If the Iranian Canadian has no family in Canada and all the family in Iran, well, this seems weird, doesn't it? 25,000 to families of Canadian victims. They all live in Iran, but I wonder what the percentage is. Of the 57, how many have family in Canada? I'm just wondering. I don't know. This article is the first time I found out that Iran's state media was reporting 3 Canadians killed. 3 citizens. And here's the Iranian foreign minister and Mr. Champagne, our foreign minister, Canada's foreign minister, having a laugh, right? Ho, ho, ho. And I mean, pleasantries are pleasantries, right? You shake hands and all that other stuff. It's a serious matter and all that. But this just seems really strange, right? Like, what's so funny? It just seems weird, doesn't it? And it seems weird for Canada to take point on all this. Shouldn't Iran be taking point? There's the foreign minister. Sir, you owe the families $25,000 each. It's $2 million and change. Okay. Did you hear the one about right? Isn't that weird? It's weird. Very strange. Here's a meme that tells the story much better than I am. This is the soldier. This is the veteran that was told he was asking for too much by Trudeau. Maybe he should claim his legs were on flight 752. Right? We just don't have that kind of money these days. Here, speaking about veterans and rounding out my short video yesterday at 7 minutes, I said, it's going to be a short one. And then I went to like the full 15. So this actually is going to be a short one. I saw this, and this is veterans.gc.ca. And you can't see this, or maybe you can, but the date says Tuesday, October 29th. I don't know if that's a 2100 or whatever. I think it's 2019. And it says wait times, and the condition that they're waiting for is other single condition, and the wait weeks is 50 weeks on average if you're waiting for service from Veterans Canada. Okay, and it says the meme here says, oh look, it went up from 46 weeks to 50 weeks, asking for more than Trudeau will give, right? And I just went to the website today. Here it is, live. And this is January 18th, as I said at the top. And I went to other single condition. And since October 29th, it's gone up 4 weeks. Yeah. Right? Is that acceptable when Canada is jumping all over themselves to give $25,000 to families of victims on Flight PS 752? Is that strange to anybody else? Is that offensive to anybody else? Right? But They'll go to Winnipeg and they'll chat about it. They'll talk about it. And the problem I have with this is they're just going to be in a conference room. It's not like they're going to go out and see the people of Winnipeg. They might see some people at the restaurant that they go and eat at, but they're not doing tours. They're not hearing people what they think of the government. They're not doing any of that work. They're doing the work of governing, which is supposed to be done in Ottawa. I'd love to understand what they think the outreach is here. Meeting with the mayor? Well, you've got Google Hangouts, right? It has up to 5 people can join. You could do it every morning. How's everybody this morning, Canada? Right? Let's go. If you really wanted to, you could. And I'm sure the premiers would love the extra access. But that's not realistic because, Trudeau needs the deputy prime minister to share an office with him, to even have the facade of the job half getting done. And I mean, it's not. They're just shoveling money outside of the country. Taxpayer dollars? Oh, we've got something we can give it to a foreign government for. And the people won't get really upset. Well, I don't know. I think if the headlines were similar to 3 Canadians instead of 57 Canadians, I think things would be different. So it's really interesting. It's very interesting what's going on. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful